Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. Today, my guest is none other than the professor of prospecting, Shawn Sease. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, Mark. Hello, everybody.
Great. Yeah, tell us about yourself, Shawn.
Sure. I'm the CEO and founder, like everybody else, of a company these days. Of a company called I Never Answer .com, and another brand that we're actually standing up right now. As a matter of fact, just kind of a little rebrand called Founders Funnels. That's foundersfunnels.com. Basically, you'd call it a third party lead gen or agency, where we actually help our clients turn people who've never heard of them into lifetime customers who tell everyone all about them.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious. I'm curious about your background, Shawn, because I know we started to talk about this just before we hit record, and I thought, hang on, let's include this because I think it's really relevant to some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. Could you tell us a little bit about your sales journey, your career, and whatnot? What kind of led you to where you are now?
Yeah, you bet. I think there's always something universally true about a career, isn't there? It sounds something like this: that the person doesn't pick the career picks the person. In other words, we set out in our young years thinking that, hey, we're going to go to college, we're going to do this, and we're going to conquer the world, and so on. And I happened to grow up in the San Francisco Bay Area, or better yet, closer to San Jose, which is 50 miles south of San Francisco. So I didn't grow up in San Francisco. I grew up in the suburbs around Silicon Valley. And of course, born in 1971. That put me, I was in my 20s in 1990, and I basically grew up in high tech. I got my first job working in a shipping room for a software company where I was shrink wrapping the packages and copying 3.5-inch copies and working around software development. So long story short, I kind of grew up as a coder. Since I was little, I taught myself basic programming language. And the part about the career picks you is that after, writing code and taking some college and working for smart people and so on, some people came to me and said, "Hey, you seem to do a great job at helping people understand things so that they can make really good decisions. Have you ever thought of trying your hand at sales?" And this was always in startups, right? When they're trying to uh, build sales teams. And so I said, "Sure, what the heck?" I listened to some smart people. I said, "What the heck? I do like to talk to people. That'd be great." And it turned out that, that time, that was during the era when, a lot of people didn't know about high tech. They didn't know how to use Windows or whatever. So that's my story of the career picks the person. I got into sales, and then the rest is history. So fast forward probably 27 years from that, from being, 20, 21 years old. And after having a lot of basically full cycle selling, also had started a couple of businesses in there, like 4 to 6 years of running different businesses where I was actually selling and installing very niche products like electronic document storage systems, electronic medical records, and things like this. And it was probably around 2017, 2018, about 7 or 8 years ago, that I hooked up with, a gentleman who is still pretty active in kind of outbound, but really process driven. To do lead gen. I got into the lead gen world, like doing meeting setting for companies with this person. And so I had brought my 27 years of experience to that. The role, though, the role was take over for me all of the calling that we're doing to book appointments so that I can go do CEO stuff. And this is my partner, the people I was working with, so that they could go sell more. So I came in and did that because it was easy, right? The job was, well, all we have to do is book meetings and we get paid for it. And the first thing I thought was, well, how simple is that? We're only doing the very beginning of what a full cycle rep does, what I had been doing my whole life. How easy is it? Okay, if people pay for that, wow, awesome. And it didn't take me very long to realize that a lot of it was set up improperly. And what I mean by that, what I mean by that is that outbound cold calling specifically works really well through a long game perspective. And one of the fundamental problems, or what I was always at odds with the team there, was this expectation that we have a process and it works and trust us. Basically trying to set expectations that we're so good at it that we're going to get meetings that are going to convert to revenue. So trust us, it works. And then what it found out of, right away is that people would sign up, we'd get a couple of meetings, and then you find out that they're not very good at converting, or there's some unrealistic expectations about what that next step is. And so I was always trying to talk to my team about, hey, in order for this agency stuff to work, we have to do a better job of actually setting expectations and doing discovery. In other words, picking really good clients, because if the clients don't understand that it's going to take some time and the messaging and so on to create what I would call kind of a flywheel or a downstream, set of contact data that starts to convert consistently, that all we're doing is running kind of an assembly line, like being first round knockout artists, building a list, calling people, asking for a meeting. They say yes or no. If they say yes, the meeting goes to our client. The client shows up and says, "What can I sell you?" In other words, they're not nurturing that call and taking it to the next step. Again, long story short, high churn, meaning that clients that signed up for us didn't stick around. Why? Because the revenue never appeared. And the revenue never appeared as a result of poor expectation setting, poor sales processes, and so on. And again, that was 8 years ago. And so I kind of went my separate ways. Those people went further up the funnel. When it was really hard to keep clients, what they decided to do was continue to develop processes or game the metrics above, meeting set, like trying to improve dial to connect, messing with data and things like this, basically trying to force assembly line selling into working because it doesn't. And I think that was just a means of being able to get money from people, like to make money. If you can make money, then you can make
Yeah.
money. That's great. I decided to stay down the road of, I'm more interested in pushing people down the funnel or setting expectations correctly, finding good clients who will stick around. And I think that that's one of the important things. If anyone's listening to this, either from you're somebody looking for a third party, lead gen, um, that if they're promising instant results, be leery, be weary of that, because that's a little, heads a little out of place. And if you're a third party agency or starting one because you believe that you can do this for people and so on, you either kind of really have to get to the point where you're confident enough that you're asking for 3-month commitments, like 3-month commitments, so that you can run the process for 3 months, even 3 months against the year. All these people that are saying, hey, we'll do a pilot and try it for a month, you can quit if you want to. That was always the problem that I had, was actually not setting proper expectations just to get people through the door so that we had customers that we could call for so we could make payroll. You start aiming at all these wrong metrics. So through that last 7 or 8 years of being materially involved in third-party outbound, I have just continued to stick to my roots of doing outbound correctly, which is playing the long game and making sure that the cost of the software and the length of the cycle, or the sales cycle, is indicative of being able to do outbound. Otherwise, it's kind of a non-starter. So there's a lot in there. I'll stop there, but that brings us to where I am today and how we actually execute for our clients. And one last thing I'd say is, one thing that we have moved to for our clients is we've kind of moved away from just blunt force meeting setting, like one-to-one meeting setting. And we spend more time educating our prospects around doing more, how would you say, educating your TAM, introducing yourself to people, even to the extent of doing not one-to-one meetings, but one-to-many. In other words, almost like executive roundtables around a topic, basically kind of webinars, or that, setting up events and then inviting people to that as a way to get more people in room at one time to educate them about important topics, which has helped us change the narrative of our scripts when we're cold calling. Because the difference between, hey, we'd like to get you in a meeting to share some things with you, and versus a group of people just like you are getting together on August 8th to talk about the implications of AI in the pipeline. For example, we'd like you to be there because we want to hear what you're working on, what you're doing. Plus, we have the spotlight speaker who's going to share some of the latest ideas and innovations around what is working, what's not working, and what to be aware of. And we're using that as kind of a Trojan horse to get one-to-one meetings for our clients through building trust and rapport and people who show up. Not to mention, that we notice we notice with our clients that when we set one-to-one meetings for people and they don't show up or they don't convert for whatever reason to a next step, the clients tend to always start managing our process or questioning it and saying, "Hey, these don't seem to be qualified, or people aren't showing up, or so on." And what's super funny about this, Mark, to me, it's just kind of in the background, is kind of quietly funny, is that if we get a new client and let's say we set one-to-one meetings for them, and let's say we hit it out of the park. Let's exaggerate, and we've booked 20 meetings for them in the first month, which would be kind of like one meeting a day, like 4 weeks, 4 or 5 week or 4 5-day weeks, right? 20 days, and we book one meeting a day, 20 meetings. And let's say there's a 60% show rate. So, 12 people show up. Now we have a situation where the whoever we booked for showed up to 10 or 11 or 8 or 10 meetings that didn't show up. Obviously, they're going to say, "Hey, the show rate's pretty pitiful. What's going on?" Well, that's a natural implication of doing outbound. People are busy or whatever. It happens. But they start questioning the process, and even then the meetings that do show up, another constraint starts to surface, which is a lot of people are not that good at selling, especially trying to convert intro meetings from cold calls to, another step in the pipeline, because you set a meeting with people who probably don't even know you, had never even heard of you. And so when who you book for shows up and says, "So what brings you here today?" Or, "How can I sell you something?" There's these steps that get skipped, and then they don't build a rapport to take it to the next step. And so then when they don't go to the next step, instead of saying, "Oh, we need some help with converting these," they say that they're not qualified enough. And then they start asking us to qualify harder. And then that naturally starts to become an unnatural process. You're trying to do too much in the cold call. You're trying to qualify, and the whole thing falls apart, right? So there's kind of this, there's almost something unnatural about cold calling and third party lead gen. There's something unnatural, like an unrealistic expectation. And you can see it a lot because a lot of people will say, "Hey, no contracts. You can sign up for a month and you can quit if you don't like it." To me, that's all that is saying, is that we're desperate for money to stay in business and we're not really sure about our process, because the opposite of that would be we require a 3-month commitment, because anything short of that is not going to give us enough signal to see where we are or create this follow-up. And if you don't have the runway, the money, the stomach, the stamina, you're putting my business at risk, you know? And again, I just to wrap, I know I said one more thought here. I also kind of think that this is why we're seeing a lot of this go-to-market engineer stuff, where somebody becomes an SDR, right? And then they do the role for a little while, and probably in an assembly line situation inside of an organization trying to do outbound unnaturally, they fail. Everybody gets let go, but these SDRs believe that they can make it work. So they become an agency, to do it for other people. They find out how hard it is. And then they just get into list building and trying to game the metrics above meeting set, doing all these kind of things that sound good, but they don't actually move the needle, because they're trying to add so much precision to the process. And then what happens when you finally have to call people and you talk to people, conversations are not as precision. They're not as precision as the spreadsheet is, right? The conversion metrics, it doesn't work like the conversion metrics do. So this is kind of why I've been kind of a vocal advocate about being, again, leery or weary of assembly line selling in general, because it's becoming very, very popular. And it seems to me the people that are making all the money are the people that are part of the SDR, BDR tools industrial complex. All the people saying you must have all these things in order to be successful. Well, they continue to make money no matter what, probably the same exact concept of people say, how does ZoomInfo or all these other data brokers get away with having, 30 or 40% of their data eroded? Well, people keep buying it, right? That's why. That's why. They don't have to go and make it any better. People buy it. And whether those companies go out of business or not, doesn't matter, because there's more people starting new businesses that are going to buy data that will go out of business, but ZoomInfo and all these other companies that are selling tools and tips and tricks are getting rich off of the failure of assembly line selling. It's probably like owning like a mercantile store or a supply, a hardware store at a mining camp, right? It's better to sell shovels during a gold mine or during a gold rush than it is to actually be a gold miner. Yeah. So I'll stop there and hand it back because that was a long-winded. I took over the whole thing there.
Best intro I've had so far from a guest. So that's awesome, Shawn. Of course, there's like 7 different things I want to ask or comment on there, but
Yeah.
just a couple of things. I totally agree with what you said specifically about qualifying on cold calls. You know, we're very big on, we want to send quote qualified meetings to our customers, but there's a point at which, and you can feel it, right? There's a point in a call, in a conversation where you've gone too far, it's gone too much, and the prospect is kind of like, yeah, I've kind of heard what I need to hear. I don't need to have that further conversation. You kind of milk it too. I totally agree with that. The thing you were saying about whether it's the GTM engineer types or the others that you kind of alluded to earlier on about going up the funnel, gaining the metrics, connect rates, connect to conversation, all of this stuff. There's value in going the other way as well. So actually, this is assuming you can find the right clients that actually are open to help converting the leads that you're providing, right? So there's value in going the other way and actually, right, let's support you, teach you proper discovery, how to actually manage that conversation and set those next steps and things like that. Is that something that you've looked at doing, or?
Yeah, we actually have added that to our discovery calls and our expectation settings, where we kind of walk our prospects along this. We use the theory of constraints, right? We basically say there are a few kind of waypoints or checkpoints. When we build a target list, there's dial to connect. How many people answer the phone? And when we call, and dial to connect is an elusive metric because it's hard to use it. It's hard to use it in any way that really makes sense. Anyways, I don't want to get carried away there. My point is that dial to connect just tells us how many people answer the phone. We're always trying to get to we're always trying to get to 8 to 12 conversations per hour. We don't seem to have much of a problem doing that with the list that we get or whatever. But I think that always has a lot more to do with the will to do the work. Like if you actually sit down and do a 4-hour call block with a parallel dialer, you're going to have 10 to 20 conversations. There's no two ways about it. Usually when people saying they're suffering is that they picked up the phone, they called for a few minutes, a couple of people called, answered the phone, they hung up, and then they stopped. And then they're crying about the dial to connect. And so then they go out and try to find other things to help fix that. And to me, it's more like, hey, well, they're validating the data. I'm doing something significant. And then I'm really going to get ready to kick ass. And really all you did was give yourself a break from the fact that you're not geared for cold calling. And even when you get this validated list back, which doesn't really mean anything, because again, dial to connect, you don't know when someone's going to pick up the phone. So we use the theory of constraints to say, we have these little things to figure out how many people answer the phone, and then how does the message resonate? And what I mean by that is that we start with a generic message because we know what we're doing. And we start with a generic message so that we're trying to say things and get the feedback we need from the prospects to tell us how to change the message, right? We'll get the feedback in the first couple of days and we'll start modifying the message. I'll give you an example of that, right? An example of that is we have this campaign we've been working on for a long time with somebody. They sell point of sale systems to liquor stores, so a niche. It was great, point of sale systems for liquor store. So it's like a modernization play. All the liquor stores already have cash registers, QuickBooks, or a new POS system. So we were using a permission-based opener. We're saying, hey, you got half a minute, or are you too busy? And immediately people started saying, actually, I'm behind the counter at one of my stores. Oh, you're actually working, in your store right now? Yeah, I take a shift. I own the place, but I actually take a shift. So we immediately changed our opener to, hey, Mark, Shawn over at Sante, you're not expecting my call at all. It's the first time I tried to reach you. You got half a minute? I'll share with you what I'm up to. Or have I caught you behind the counter with the line out the door? And that was my way, our way of just personalizing this. And people were like, no, actually, I'm not at the counter, you know? So those little tiny tweaks, we just say something, people tell us. So back to the discovery part of it, right? When we get to the point where we say we're actually going to get meetings for you, what we find is that now that's a constraint. When we book a meeting for you, Mr. Customer, it's now out of our purview. I'm no longer involved with it. What we have found is that that's the place where this engagement falls down. You either have trouble converting those intro calls, or maybe you just need help with the process. So we do offer training, coaching, and further development to help drive things down the funnel. So that goes back to directly answering your question, that we bring it up early, and then we start getting signals like, nah, we're good to go, we're all set. And then that transitions to, okay, when we get to the financial part of it, we do require, a 3-month commitment. And we basically say, you pay half of it up front. And then in 6 weeks, in the middle of the second month, we want the payment to finish out this 3-month cycle. And we're doing this basically to run our whole entire process for 3 cycles. So we have some semblance of a sample size that could tell us something, including our client's ability to do the next step, or do we have to step in and help them? Now, going back to my intro, we evolved this process and found out that people struggle with one-to-one meetings, even for a lot of reasons too. If you're good at cold calling and you get meetings, you might be able to actually convert false positives, where the conversation goes so well that somebody feels good and they say, sure, why not? But then when the meeting time comes, they go back and go, actually, now that I think about it, I go to the website, not that important to me, or they get there and it's not that big of a deal. That's what got us going down the road of, one of the reasons why we ended up with one-to-many meetings, like our group discovery or group intro calls, is to mitigate all of these no-shows and actually change the narrative in the cold call itself. We wanted to get more connects converted to better conversations. And so we use this group discovery. What we have found is that, going back to the no-show rates, when we do a group discovery, we can usually get in that same 4-week period I was talking about in the intro. If we take 1,000 contacts, if we start with 1,000 contacts, we prospect directly to people who are active on LinkedIn in a LinkedIn sequence, in a very different way than pitch slapping. We've come up with some language that's a lot simpler. People are always shocked, like, I can't believe I didn't think of that. You know how simple it is to get people to register for an event where they could learn something. Then we take the other part of the list and we actually just cold call them. And we, with our script to get them registered. So for 1,000 contacts, and these are averages, for 1,000 contacts, every 3 to 4 weeks, we usually get about 50 to 60 people registered, 20 to 25 people show up to this event. And then we actually show up and help moderate the event. Like, we do it with our clients so that we can get the engagement, the rapport, the trust, chime in with the right question or so on. And then what we find is that one-to-one meetings that are, quote, qualified fall out of that as a result. So the cold call becomes, join something really cool so you can become a better version of yourself. Even if you can't make it, we'll send you the recording. If you can't make it, you can go to the next one, right? Whatever. Trying to deal with all the timing issues of cold calling, people being busy with stuff, and kind of reluctant to take one-to-one meetings, because that always feels like, no, I don't want to be in a sales process, or probably subconsciously just saying no, because you're not even talking to the real me. So what happens is we get more one-to-one meetings that are qualified, because people will say in the thing, they'll raise their hand, or immediately after when the event ends, we say, hey, we're going to follow up with everybody asking for feedback on this event. Plus, those of you who need to take a next step, just go ahead and take a time on the calendar. And then we tend to get, 5 to 10 one-to-one meetings out of that. And then we're seeing, 1 to 2 people go on to be clients, for them, becoming customers, or better yet, ending up qualified in the pipeline, right? So, qualified opportunity in the pipeline, with trust built, rapport built, and all the other goodies that go along with it. That if I reach out to you and leave a voicemail, you call me back. If I send you an email, you reply, right? The relationship is established, that we've gotten rid of all of those, reply metrics and dial to connect metrics and whatever. We're actually feeling the people out of our list that we could actually do something from. So that was another way to mitigate that question was, how do we help our people do better discovery calls? Well, that might not be the best way. What we have found out is that for a lot of our clients, it's better to kind of go back to the fundamentals of top of funnel, which you can't see it on my board. But if you, again, keeping things simple up there, we kind of think of the funnel in 3 stages, right? There's awareness, the tip top of the funnel. Then the second step is considering, we're actually thinking about it. We're in the pipeline, whatever. And then the third part is deciding. And so if you take the wide angle lens around awareness, we're still fans of using kind of working with marketing and so on to educate the TAM, as opposed to, which is in contrast to assembly line selling, which doesn't have anything to do with marketing, right? It's just building a list, calling people, asking for meetings, and da 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 da. And you're missing out on this huge opportunity. I shouldn't say huge opportunity, but more like the natural order of things. And again, that's just another example of probably me bringing my 27 years of experience of actually selling, and I would say selling successfully and selling unsuccessfully, because, I've been in roles where I didn't succeed. I shouldn't have been there. So I quit or got let go. I've been the top performer at some roles. It's just hard to say, what you're going to do in what environment. So there's an example of kind of, taking a closer look at things. And you're asking me, hey, do you offer services to help people improve taking those one-to-one meetings or doing discovery and so on? The answer is yes. But we've also backed up in our own selling process with our prospects to educate them on the difference of one-to-one meetings versus getting marketing involved and, putting together events and saying, hey, let's educate the TAM, a little bit. And then we'll get the people will raise their hand as a result of that, as opposed to just saying, almost like keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like everybody has SDRs. Everybody's validating data. We must do that, right? And then you find out that actually everyone's trying to implement assembly line selling because it sounds good. And then when they find out that not enough people convert, then they say, oh, we better validate our data, right? We need to increase the number of people that tell us to go to hell in a shorter time, which is just giving money to the SDR, BDR industrial complex. They're not solving for how do we get more clients. They're just saying, hey, if you're gonna run assembly line selling, send us some money. And which to me would be like the equivalent of like if you go into an auto store, they have, or even at gas stations, they have those weird little bottles of additives. They're like, pour this additive into your gas tank and improve your gas mileage. And it's complete and total bullshit. It's maybe a little higher octane alcohol or something that burns hotter, that probably burns a little bit of carbon off, but it doesn't have any significant impact and may even do more damage than anything because it's burning hotter than the engine should be burning. And you might be doing damage to the valve, the valves and so on. It's like, it's a crutch, it's a quick fix. So again, there's another answer to, like, it's just not as simple as it seems, right? There's always something underneath what's going on here. So our answer to helping people through discovery was get them more qualified opportunities, but that required that we did a better job of picking better clients who would go through the process correctly so that it would work, instead of trying to sell them shiny objects and conversion metrics. Is that clear? Because I said a lot there.
Yeah. I find the one-to-one versus one-to-many thing really interesting, actually, because it's something that I've thought about on a particular campaign for a customer that we've been working on. How do you, I don't know if you're able to answer this, but how do you determine what the right approach is? Is it,
Well, yeah. So,
doing
I think that is a great question, because this is another thing that naturally came up for us, is that what I did is I created a document it's probably in one of my posts. It's definitely in my cold calling and messaging workshop deck, the deck that I use for my free Monday morning cold calling and messaging workshop at 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's on my LinkedIn. Anyone can register for that. I do that just because I enjoy it. I get a kick out of it. It does something for me. I like it. But what I did was I created a document where I basically narrowed down what I believe the 3 outbound scenarios are And the 3 outbound scenarios have exactly to do with what you sell, who you sell it to, how much it costs, and the length of the sales cycle, right? That would always be my first question when someone says, "Hey, how do you approach this?" And I'd say, well, my first question is, what do you sell? Who do you sell it to? Just like in on LinkedIn too, when somebody kind of just innocently posts, "Hey, we're thinking about buying a dialer. Anyone have any ideas?" This is an everyday thing, right? Everyone just starts saying nooks, connect and sell, this, that, do, 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 do. And I'm thinking, well, what makes you think you need a parallel dialer? Or what, like, it depends. It depends. I would have to, and I put my information there. Hey, here's my calendar. If you want to talk, I'm happy to give you some advice or walk you through some ideas that could help you make a really good decision. But I'm not talking about which dialer is the best. I'm actually saying, hold on, what are you trying to do? And again, this is one of those things. Who do you sell to? What do you sell? Who do you sell to? How much does it cost, and the length of the sales cycle? And we broke it down into 3 different things. And we just gave them our labels that we came up with. The first one is transactional. And we define that. So that's just the label. And then the descriptor for that is, it's a low cost kind of thing, like $50 to $100 a month. Something that probably they're behind that, the owner's saying, we're PLG, we're product-led growth, which means that they're starving for pipeline, which means that, translate that to, we need customers bad, badly, because PLG, it's just a made up, it's just stupid, right? Like, it's just made up. Sounds good, but it's stupid. Salespeople justify their existence with all kinds of things they wish people valued it, whatever. So transactional, which you're borderline on, is it even cost effective from a financial perspective, from the CFO's perspective, to actually hire and have reps to try to sell it that way? You have to have a bottomless pit of cash, because the customer acquisition cost is just too high. At $50 a month, or was it $600 a year, or $200 a month at $2,500 a year? It's really tough. But what we would say is that for transactional is that basically meetings probably are they're not going to be effective. Like, people have to buy faster than a cycle that requires a call, a meeting, and so on, which means that the objective of the cold call would be, hey, if we want to get you into a proof of concept or a trial or whatever, can I get you signed up? You're looking for the people you can sign up right now, basically, which means that meetings aren't going to be what you're after. So you'd have to, kind of formulate your way around that. The second one would be what we call tactical, which means that you sell a solution that solves, it's like a point solution. It costs more money. It solves a problem inside of another system. For example, let's say you're making AI bots that reconcile accounting software like Peachtree or QuickBooks or whatever, without any human intervention, right? And maybe it's $500 a month or something like that, or an AI bookkeeper or something like that, right? So it's $5,000-$6,000 a year, but it's a point solution. So you're probably going to just call up people and say a few things, try to get a meeting, and take them to the next step, right? You're just kind of tactically calling to get meetings with people that fit into your little box. The third one would be strategic, which means that you're not trying to solve a pain or problem inside of another system. You're actually working at the layer where you're trying to align strategically with the organization's long-term strategic initiatives, right? Think, ERP, enterprise resource planning, CRM, whatever, the big solutions that affect everything, that have 1, 2, 3-year long sales cycles and are usually, 5-figure, 6-figure, 7-figure deals. To me, that scenario would be, the first thing we need to do is just call and introduce ourselves like normal professional people, because we have a lot to learn about this client, about this customer, before we ever get in a sales cycle. Like, how are you currently doing it? Who do you currently use? How long have you been doing it that way? When does that contract renew? You're kind of trying to strategically become somebody of value. So if you show up like a short-term person trying to uproot Salesforce and get a meeting to show them why they're stupid, it's just a bad way to start it out, because that's not how it works. It's going to take a long time. So that's another thing that we do to help educate, or I should say that's what we do to try to help our customers have some light bulb moments, which usually turn into, wow, I never thought of it that way. And that, to me, that if we had a little asterisk here, that's one of the things, kind of the energy I'm looking for during discovery calls, because it kind of gives me a signal that I'm becoming kind of a a trusted advisor, or, somebody that they're thinking, oh, wow, when I talk to this guy, he shares some ideas that we hadn't even thought about that make perfect sense. Let's continue to pursue this. And that document with the 3 different scenarios has helped with that, because people go, God, I didn't even, wow, I didn't even think about that this way. So that's how I would answer. That's, you can see I keep going back. Everything I'm saying here, I spend all this time educating our clients on not doing the wrong thing. And if it doesn't align with how we really want to do it and what we think we need to do, we're going to say, thanks for the opportunity. There are plenty of other people that are willing to steal your money and kick you in the nuts and call it a day, sorry for the,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's no, that's true. The strategic, yeah, that's really interesting. Really, really interesting, because I'm thinking about it's a similar, it's not CRM, it's a similar kind of enterprise level solution, trying to sell into essentially blue chip organizations. With
Yeah. I mean, that's what I
long-standing.
would say, that knowing, if you are selling something strategic that, has a long sales cycle, think 3 years, because people get contracts and they stay there, is that, it seems to me in that case that the objective of the very first call should be to just kind of gather that information, which, by the way, is exactly what Adam, down in Australia, we were talking
Mhm.
about him a second ago, is talking about. He calls it validating your market. There's just, I don't like to confuse validate with validating data, because that's become this big thing. But what he's saying is that you need to gather information about your market. Are they the right people to be calling to? And we in the strategic, alignment kind of thing, or, long sales cycle where people are already in contracts, we have a service for that, like background checks, or uh, contractors doing, either payroll, or quotes, or so on. They have contracts, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contracts. And if you should know that already. And so I would think that for every time somebody answers that call, our goal in the first call should be, who are you currently using? And are you guys building it in house? And how long have you been doing it that way? And when does the contract end to renew? And how many users are using it? So, and then have those fields in your database so that you're actually collecting intelligence about your hand that could be useful. That you could go, okay, great, that's all I need to know. Like, even, hey, Mark, I'd be shocked if you're not you, or just like uh, refining the script for the POS guy. We were able to pull out of, our client, and then further from the people we were calling the different kind of solutions they were using. So what we did was we implemented what we called our 3 Q&A script, and it starts out like it's 3 questions and an ask for a meeting. And so we put together everything that I'm saying about how we would prospect towards people into this 3 Q&A script to bring it to life. So it's not just fluff, right? So it's not just talk, like, so it's not just you're doing it wrong. So we would say, hey, we're modernizing, we're leading the way in modernizing POS for liquor stores. And, the reason for my call today, Mark, was to get some time on your calendar so I could, formally introduce myself and my company. But before we do that, and just to make sure it's relevant, I got 3 quick questions for you. It'll take half a minute. I'll get you out of your hair. The first question is, we just transition to the first question. Your current POS system, have you had it for less than 1 year, less than 3 years, or 5 or more years, right? And we were not asking, there's always so much coaching and training here, right? That the question was asked, it's a closed-ended question. It's a multiple choice. There's no wrong answer. We're gathering information. We're not trying to, do an inception where a light bulb goes off and someone goes, oh my God, I'm glad you called. Because the moment they reply with, oh, less than a year, we're installing it now. Boom. I mean, there I am. I'm late to the show. They just modernized. I missed the boat, right? If they say, no, we've had it for longer than 5 years, it's completely natural at this point for me to say, the old cash register in QuickBooks or something like that, right? And they go, yeah, you got it. And then I could go down to what would matter to them because they have a cash register in QuickBooks, right? And so the script is designed in a way that helps. This is why I said you have to say something. The prospect says something back, and then there's forks in the road. You go to the next spot, but it is all kind of designed and laid out. And you should really be shocked when somebody says something you've never heard before. And when they do, you go back and take that and add it and see if it's worth bringing it up, which would be preempting objections and things like that. But that three Q&A script, I forgot what your original question was when I started talking about that. I lost my way here. But the,
yeah. So it was about like figuring out when is the right approach. And
yeah, okay.
I think
Yeah.
you've answered perfectly. And what I wanted to say is this one major theme I'm taking from everything you're saying here is that it comes down to and I guess this is whether you're an agency or whether you're a full cycle seller trying to find the right employer.
Yeah.
It's about finding the right client, right? Because you said it yourself. It's finding that these people, for this to work, the people that you work with need to have the runway, the guts, I don't remember the exact word you said.
Yeah, the stomach, the stamina, the money, the will, and patience, right? Patience.
That's it. Yeah, and a big part of that is again, you touched on this, is expectation management. Is finding the right people, setting the right expectations, and so on. Yeah. So there's no real question there, but
there is for the people that are listening that are might be looking at you as a using you as an agency or so on. The message to those people is you do have to be they have to be careful about how they choose, because third-party lead gen agencies have a tendency to kind of mask or obfuscate that they're in kind of a weird growth churn accordion. That third-party lead gen agencies that are trying to grow and they say we're the fastest growing and we're the best or so on. I have yet to talk to somebody or know anyone that doesn't have a churn problem. And what happens is that a lot of people go in on a lot of tools. They buy all the tech stack stuff to run their agency. So they have this tech stack debt. They start over promising. And so they get clients and the prices aren't that high, like $2,500 a month, $3,500 a month. So the entry level isn't a lot of money, which makes people go, well, we can test it. If it works, great. If not, we could quit, because the expectations are we don't do contracts. We haven't done a very good discovery. So what they're hiding is the fact is they're trying to get money in the door so they can make payroll. And behind the scenes, they're fighting this internally. The customer success team who is enabling the accounts is wondering why the salespeople said what they said to the new client, right? Like, why are you saying these things that we can't do? They're like, well, we need to, we just make it happen, right? And I can say that till I'm blue in the face, but because I've seen it over and over, and that's where we got so bullish. Well, I shouldn't say bullish, because setting expectations and doing good discovery and getting to the point where, hey, do I want to hire you as a customer or not, is really, I think, is really what sales is probably all about, right? Like we need to hire good customers, and if we don't, it's not going to work. Anyway, I was just that's great. I mean, I even see some people saying, hey, I'll do well, that was on the one-to-one meeting side today. What we've done when people want that, and when they say, no, I'm not interested in your little group thing, Shawn, sounds good, whatever, I can already tell that we're probably not communicating, right? They're not actually hearing what I'm saying, and we're going down the road where I'm starting to lose interest too. Like, hey, I get, because what they're saying is, no, these guys promise 30 meetings a month. How many meetings do you guarantee? I say, we don't guarantee meetings, but not because we're afraid to guarantee meetings. It's just the wrong thing to do at this step. What we do offer, Mr. Bangs, is we offer a basically what we call an outbound lab. What we'll do is we'll take 1,000 contacts or whatever, 2,000, who cares? We'll do 20 hours of calling. And what we're going to do is come back. We'll set up we'll get a message. We'll put our best foot forward. It's let's say it's 2,400. I don't know what I charge for it now. It's either 2,495 or 29.95. We don't do much of it anymore, because you'll see what happened. You'll see what happens as I explain it here. We tell them what we're doing. We do the lab, and the lab is for us to set metrics like the dial to connect. How does the message resonate? How many meetings do we get? How much information? What kind of stomach does who you're targeting have for being reached by the phone through all these different constraints, right? When I'm saying the theory of constraints, one after the other. one,
Yeah.
this one, next one, next one, next one. And at the end, and so we do 20 hours of calling. So we frame that up as either, 5 days, 4 hours a day, or 10 days, 2 hours a day. And then we'll set a meeting, we'll come back and we'll go over those metrics. And both of us, you, Mr. Banks, you'll get a chance to, ask questions about, call quality, whatever, you can listen to the recordings. I might have some questions, or we both get to come back and say whether or not we want to do this. And I, as the owner of my agency, one of the things I may come back and say, all things being equal, we're going to pass, and that might be because I already know that they're going to be a bad client, or I don't even want to do it, or I just know that the headaches are just going to be too much.
Mm.
But during that call, if they start to understand what's happening and going, okay, I get it. I see what you mean now. It wasn't smart to guarantee meetings. That doesn't make any sense. We need to kind of make some more calls, figure things out. But that is, so we won't sign up anybody in a contract for one-to-one meeting settings without doing that lab. And again, for us, the lab was a way for us to kind of suss out people who don't have the stomach, stamina, or better yet, the budget. They're lying about where they are in their journey, because that's another thing. I think it's fair to say that it's not a natural course for somebody to start a business and then say, I want to outsource my sales. I think that more likely is that people who start businesses are kind of dynamic, strong personalities who want to win and do it themselves. They're ego driven too. There's a lot at play. And for them to have to go to third-party agency, something in their plan did not happen the way they wanted, which just makes me kind of skeptical of anyone who's searching out third-party lead gen, that is going to be a trick to get them to share their real secrets with you. When we promote the lab, they'll say, I don't have the time to do that. I need somebody to come do this. And you're like, nobody can do that. So I'm not going to steal your money is the way I look at it. I'm not going to overpromise and steal your money just for the fact that you're desperate, because there are plenty of other people that will do that. And that's another way that we actually qualify and keep, bad clients out. But we also have a business. We move from wanting to be a big, huge agency to just saying, hey, we could make a really good living when we deliver for people. If somebody stays with you for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, you can make a good living by having 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 clients with a couple of callers and a good, kind of little operations team. You can make a really good living doing this, but you have to do that stuff. Now, the good expectation settings and kind of put some, guardrails around what you're doing and be a good steward of outbound. So what happened was the lab, what we would do is say, the lab is, let's say it's $29.95. The group discovery model that we do, we currently do that for $3,995 per month. And that's where we could say, we'll take 1,000 clients and we'll get 1,000 contacts. And using our process, we have historically gotten 20 to 25 people to show up to a group meeting, and then they go on to be better one-to-one meetings. It's working, and I would say it's working because, again, we're getting away from the assembly line thing, right? The just calling, set a meeting, We're actually slowing down and taking a little step. With these 1,000 people, we'll probably end up talking to about 200 of them or something, in the 3-week sprint to, this. And we're going to get 60 or 70 people registered. 20 or 25 people are going to show up. Another thing I didn't mention earlier about this is that it completely and totally mitigated the clients coming back and trying to manage our process, saying that, hey, there's no shows and they're not converting. So you need to do a better job qualifying. You're not doing your job. When 20 or 25 people show up to one meeting and there's all this engagement hype, and then more people go on to one-to-one meetings to become qualified opportunities that turn 1 or 2 of them turn into customers in short order. Not a single founder has questioned, hey, it dawned on me. You guys registered 60 people, but only 25 people showed up. What's going on there? Nobody says a word, because when we do it for 3 months, naturally the people who didn't show up for the first one, we call them again. Hey, you didn't make it. Can we send you the recording? How about we put together a one-to-one meeting and we'll go over what you missed, right? We're actually referring back to the thing they registered. We're not calling about a cold call or a meeting or telling them other people like you think we're cool, so why don't you, or whatever people say in their messaging to sound relevant or whatever. That was another interesting caveat to doing the group thing, that we've mitigated the whole no shows and our clients being unable, a constraint outside of our purview, the intro call or the meeting or whatever, us not being there to help facilitate that becomes, we're not doing our job well enough when they don't do a good job in that meeting. We got rid of that. And so those prices for the lab and the group discovery are so close together, but the lab, the group discovery generates revenue and pipeline. The lab is just more like, let me prove to you for a small amount of money that you're going to struggle to convert people to qualified opportunities through this assembly line selling, because you're just not there. You're not that guy. You're people don't trust you enough to do that. The group thing has mitigated that. So that's another thing, is just a agency owner ways that we have come up with to help our clients actually, what's the old Zig Ziglar thing, right? Help people get what they want, right? And even though people call us and say, hey, we need meetings now, like, I get it. I understand. Sounds good. But that's going to be the faster way for you to go out of business at this stage if we go with this group thing. And that has helped us, convert people and get them into that group meeting. And then it's easier. So, earlier when you said, hey, do you offer services to coach people on discovery and so on? The answer is, yeah, we were actually doing that, or bringing it up. We were bringing it up. We actually didn't do a whole lot of it, but we brought it up and people said, oh, that's smart. But the reality is that meeting setting for revenue through lead gen agency, people try it for a month or two and they go away. It's the reality of it. It's and anyone else who says anything other, even the 1099 guys, or the guys who are out there, bless their hearts, are doing a great job. There's a lot of good ones, smart ones, that are setting meetings for people and saying, I'm making $250,000 a year doing it. If you go and look closely or ask them straight up, they're not doing $1,000 a day for the same client over and over. They are getting a new client and doing that same thing, and the client's not renewing, and they're doing it for another client. So it's not exactly how it seems. They're not saying, hey, I'm making $250,000 a year setting meetings for people, and my clients are making millions and millions. They're leaving out the part about, well, I do it for this one and then they didn't renew, but I had another one because they're following me and I did it for them. They're saying they're making $250,000 a year through a process that isn't working through their clients, but it's working for them, which again, is my kind of take on even the validation services and what I said about the SDR, BDR tools industrial complex. They're making their money doesn't mean that their clients are going on and generating revenue. That it does not, they're not correlated that way, So yeah, to summarize that, we don't offer long-term contracts for one-on-one meeting setting. We require you do a lab. And if you're not interested in that, thank you very much for the opportunity to work with you. Good luck with everything, right? Because we're not even going to bother, because I'm not going to hire new people for a contract where you might come back if you can't convert those meetings. And now you say, whatever, I know we're in a contract, but I'm not going to pay you anyways because it's not working. And now I hired this person and so on, and it doesn't fit inside of my safety net model, right? Because we can do these labs all day with the team we have. We could sneak in the 2 hours a day of calling all day, no problem, where the group discovery for just, 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever more, we're doing LinkedIn, separating the LinkedIn people from the cold calling, getting 20 to 25 people in the room at one time. And then that just becomes a frequency thing. If you want to increase that volume and do it twice a month, that's easy to do. That's just 2 different dates that we're filling up using the same volume of calling, right? That's, what I mean? You can turn the dial there. People, what can we do to get 50 people there? Well, the funny thing is that you don't want 50 people there, right? You don't want 50 people at an event, because then you lose the engagement. Somewhere around 15 to 20 people is the sweet spot for picking out the 3 or 4 people who are really engaging versus the wallflowers. When it becomes 50 people, it becomes a webinar. You don't know who's who. It's weird. It's a funny thing. You start having this problem of like, there's a diminishing return kind of thing, right? And so you might say, hey, let's do 2 of them, which again, when you do 2 of them per month, that helps with your cold calling too, because we go back to a very, very simple principle of cold calling where people don't actually trust you because they don't know you. we can get into the psychology of cold calling and all the other goodies, which means that people are kind of emotionally elevated when you call them, and you can hear it. And I post about this kind of stuff all the time to help people with their underlying, how they go about it, which is, what is this about? What do you want? Whatever. People are emotionally heightened. When they're emotionally heightened, their dominant personality trait is winning, which means they're trying to stay in control. How do we know they're trying to stay in control? Because one of the control faculties that we have is our fight or flight, right? When we say we're going to fight or we're going to run, that's our subconscious trying to stay in control, for us. And then, we get to change that narrative when we call people by not calling for the one-to-one meetings and all that good stuff to get these people into these group meetings. Yeah. Anyways, we can talk about the psychology, or what I actually, my point was actually more significant there. If we start doing 2 of them a month, when we're calling people, when we're talking about these group events, because people are emotionally heightened and they're trying to stay in control, when I say, hey, Mark, let me get you registered for this, would earlier in the week or later in the week work for you, or like giving them options. We actually do this on the second Tuesday of every month, or we do it on the third Thursday. Is Tuesday or Thursday better for you? Do you have your calendar handy? And then they say, yeah, here, let me look real quick. Let me see. So the or part of it actually fits right into kind of the psychology of cold calling anyways, and another good
Yeah, it's
example.
the old,
Or
the alternate close. What do they call it? Is it the old? You can have
yeah,
good, better, bet. You choose between
yeah,
these
good,
three.
better. Well, I think that the or thing, it just works really well if you can use your voice. Because even one of the things when I'm closing on meetings, I always say, when they're cold, if I'm doing cold calling for meeting, it's always, hey, Mark, how's, I say the same thing every time. I just pick a day of the week and say, hey, Mark, how's this Thursday at 3? Or if that's too pressing, if this week is like, it's Thursday now. So if I'm calling, I'm probably going to switch that to, how's Tuesday at 3? Because I'm always going to skip Mondays. I hate Mondays for whatever. It's my own little personal block. How's Tuesday at 3 p.m.? Or if that's too pressing, if you've got other things going on, are we out into the next week or later into next week? I'm not asking if we should do this. I'm just saying when, and giving options. And I like to say, hey, how's next Tuesday at 3? Or if that's too pressing, if you've got other deadlines or things going on, are we further out? Are we out into next week? Do you got your calendar handy there? Let's find the time. And then, I'm not saying it works every time, but some of the reactions I get from people, or consistent reactions I get from people, like right out of the gate from the or is, yeah, no. Early next week's no good. I'm not even going to be here. So yeah, we're out into next week. Right. And that's me knowing that, when people don't know who they're talking to or whatever, that their subconscious is trying to help them out, be a little skeptical. They're trying to remain in control, and using the word or, giving people options, will help mitigate them wanting to, fight or flight. It kind of settles that down. And I've just seen that as a real tactical thing you can do in your cold calling, is give people options. Just like the permission-based opener, for example, right? Hey, Mark, it's Shawn. I know I'm interrupting you because it's the first time I tried to call you. You got half a minute. I'll share with you what I'm up to, why I picked up the phone to give you a call today, or did I just catch you when you wish you wouldn't have picked up the phone? And then if somebody says, actually, I am super busy right now, I'm driving or whatever, no problem. I got a knack for calling people at the wrong time. This afternoon be better, or tomorrow morning, And again, but that's just because I don't care. I'm not under pressure to book meetings, because I know if I force it, it's not going to go my way anyways. And then I have all the data in the world that shows that 2x to 12x better conversations, more qualified pipeline, and more revenue comes from follow-ups than it does from any meeting that was booked on a first-time call. Like, meetings that come first-time cold call connects perform the worst. Obviously, first-time cold call connects perform poorly because of two people don't know each other. And then there's the quality of the caller, and then there's the attitude of the person receiving the call, which is a nightmare. The whole engagement's a nightmare. And then meetings that are set from those first ones perform worse than meetings that are set from any sort of follow-up, whether it was the timing wasn't right, someone was busy, needed to send email or whatever. We've got the data for so many companies at 2x to 12x plus, even plus more than 12x, come from follow-ups versus trying to force things in first-time calls. And again, that data itself supports everything that we do, especially even that data there is why I prefer permission-based openers. Hey, you got half a minute? I'll share with you what I'm up to, or why I picked up the phone to give you a call today, Mark, or did I just catch you when you wish you wouldn't have picked up the phone? And when you say, actually, man, I'm super busy right now, get it, dude. I got a knack for calling at the wrong time. How about later on today or tomorrow morning? Try me tomorrow morning. They go into, I have a disposition for that actually writes a teleprompter note, everything I need. So when I call you tomorrow, hey, Mark, caught you yesterday around 2 o'clock. You were kind enough to tell me that, boy, oh boy, I caught you at the worst possible time. But together we decided to give it a try right now. Do we do any better? Are you still working on that same thing? No, we're good. What's up? The cold's gone. It's all gone. The call is no longer emotionally charged. We're both having a practical conversation. And so, again, this is like a training and coaching moment. That is, I'm not out here trying to tell people PBOs are correct because they're my favorite way. You don't have to use a permission-based opener. Again, going further back up the discovery, what do you sell? Who do you sell it to? How long does it take? Will determine the way that you would go about opening your calls or whatever. And there's different ways to do it and what you're trying to do, but it's based on that. It's not just, we have a process and it works for everybody. So who cares? Sign up and we'll get to work on it for you. Let's do it. Trust us. And then those people churn. Yeah. Or is a great thing because people are emotionally charged. Dominant personality trait is alive and well, and that helps mitigate, that fear of losing control. It leaves the prospect in control. Options, period.
Yeah. Shawn, so many gems in there, honestly. But basically a time now, but I'd love to, we've got to do a second one of these at some point where we can dig into some cold call specific stuff, because you touched on some of it, and I just know that we're barely scratching the surface of
yeah, I'd love that. I think if people are listening to this after you edit and everything, I would love to do that. If you guys want to get together and talk about some specific things, or even the people that are listening to this, if you put a comment, whenever we post this stuff, you put a comment with things you want to probably dive deeper into. I'd love to get back together with you, Mark, and put together kind of a little thing. Cause I think we arranged this one where you said, hey, you want to join me for the call? And you and I just said, yeah, let's get together and have a conversation. So we did the, intro, tell me what you do, next question, pretty simple. But yeah, I'd be happy to get together with you and look at stuff more tactically and specifically, and show some real examples of what's working and what's not working. And I'd actually probably wrap it up by saying, boy, oh boy, one of the things that I always worry about is and try to not get away from, is that outbound and cold calling and sales, it's freaking hard, man. It's hard. And I think it's probably it's a way safer assessment and mindset to say that you actually have to go through a lot of disappointment and rejection and failure. I mean, you have to live a life of quiet desperation to succeed at sales. And so if you're getting caught up in the hype of success, you're not getting the whole story, because it's never been like that. What I meant, what I said earlier about a lot of these guys who were saying, I'm making $250,000 a year. They're making $250,000 a year having conversations or setting appointments from people who are churning, they're not doing it for the same customer the whole year. Behind what they're saying is a tremendous amount of failure and stress to keep their business going. All of the people that are getting contact data validated to improve dial to connect are under some, I get it. It's fine. There's nothing elusive to me about it at all, because I know that there's no accounting for when somebody answers the phone. The only thing these validation companies are doing is they're taking your list, they're calling people to see who answers the phone, and then they're giving you a list back of people who did answer the phone. And so if you give them a list of 1,000 people, again, to me, that's like, why would you do that? That's only 1,000 people. How could you not call those people in 1 week? Why do you need help doing that? That's nothing. It's not even a significant amount of people to break a sweat over. Like, what are you doing? Why would you give somebody $500 to call those for you? Because there is no such thing as a phone picker-upper. There's no such thing as a phone intent. And that's in the numbers, right? That's 100% in the numbers. If you take a list of 1,000 people and you start calling them and you dial 100 people and 4 people answer the phone, you're saying that the dial to connect is 4%. Now we'd have to have a conversation about, what does that really mean? And statistically, it doesn't tell us anything, right? Because statistically, it means that, well, you could say this would be true if you said this about this list. Of the 100 people I just attempted to call in the last hour with the parallel dialer, for example, 4 people answered. You could say that this is a 4% dial, or let's say, yeah, that's 4% dial to connect. So what is that? you could say these people answer their phone 1 in 25 attempts. That would be true. That's a true statement, but it's not true. It's not true. Some of the people on that list answer their phone more than other people, and some people don't at all. Some people who, so my point is that when a validation company called somebody last week, and for example, somebody who rarely answers their phone answered the phone, the validation company just told you that this is a phone picker upper, but it's not true. That person probably regretted answering the phone, or they answered 1 in 20 times or 1 in 25 times, which when you go back and you call the validated list and it's running at a 25% dial to connect, that kind of tells you that uh, people don't answer their phone. And there were people that tried to call, that they called last week, that didn't answer, that didn't make the phone picker upper list. And either way, when you call the people that did answer last week, and let's say you're out of a list of 1,000 people, let's say it was 25% of the people. So you got a list of 250 people that are so-called high intent phone people, right? And then you start calling them, and only like 20, the dial to connect is 20 to 25%. People are cheering that. But now you have a list of 250 people that you're only going to talk to 100 of them, right? And again, there's no accounting for when someone's going to answer the phone. Part of cold calling is that you have, one of my friends who does third-party cold calling, and he is one of these guys who has who's had the same 2 clients for over 2 years now that he calls on. We were talking about validation the other day. So, man, I was working my follow-up list today, and I was laughing because I talked to a guy a couple of times over the last couple of years, and I called him. He answered his phone from my follow-up list. I've talked to him 3 times out of 205 attempts. And the third time, and this is a year and a half after the first time I talked to him, I booked a meeting, with him. 205 attempts, and that's because this caller just sits and he's got all this list curated, and he works it. So he's getting meetings from his follow-ups while he's calling cold calls too. So again, and I think what I was that was a real long-winded way to say that be careful about cheerleading, metrics above, like meeting set, so on, because they aren't exactly what they are, and you can define it in all kinds of different ways. So the question becomes, so what do you do? Well, we've given a couple of options, right? Get together with marketing, do group stuff, educate your TAM, and use the phone and LinkedIn to get people to that event. And then the believers will fall out of that, instead of assembly line selling to force people who don't even know who you are into meetings when they're busy with other projects or deadlines, or are in a contract or whatever, not even asking them where they are, in ever getting an appointment with you. And then when you start doing assembly line selling, that I think sales leaders get in the some of them probably even unknowingly get in the cover your ass kind of thing. Like, boy, I've spent a lot of money on tools and a lot of money on people. I really need to make this work, or I'm going to look stupid. That would be the sunk cost fallacy of saying, this isn't working. We're not ready for assembly line selling. We don't have brand resonance. We don't know what we're doing. This model won't work. Maybe we should get professional sellers, assign them a territory and a list, and let them go out and do their job to sell, as opposed to trying to find bodies that you're plugging into a system that requires so much precision that can't stand. It falls apart when the conversation happens with someone who doesn't care about what you're doing, and causes a bottleneck. So beware of the fluff. There's always stuff underneath. And I think that's really, really, really what good discovery and expectation setting is all about. That's what people mean when they say do good discovery. Out of discovery should come, we either do this together or not at all, from both sides of the engagement, because if we don't do it together, it won't get done. We can't do it, and there's a lot of virtue, I think, in sellers being good stewards of hiring good clients, as opposed to, if we don't make our numbers, we're going to go out of business, that kind of thing. And you're probably in that position from doing things wrong anyway. So yeah, be careful of the fluff and the hype merchants, because there's always more underneath the story. It's not as rosy. And what was I trying to say? And I'll give it back to you. Selling is hard, and you should expect a part of winning is losing 90% of the time. You have to be a loser, and you have to embrace that. Like, I won and I was at the top of the funnel because I worked my ass off. I did a higher, the whole quality versus quantity. It's like, what are you talking about, man? You have to do an extremely high quantity of high quality outreach. It's not one or the other. You have to do a grotesque amount of activity to actually win, because you have to lose so much to win. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
The thing I'm talking this, I'm not going to quote you verbatim here, but you have to be willing to live a life of quiet desperation if you want to be successful.
Yeah.
So,
You have to. And you have to embrace it, right? Like, this is my life. I signed up for it. That's my I had braces when I was in my teens, and then I started selling when I was 17 or 18, and I'm 54 now, and my teeth aren't as straight as they used to be. And so I laugh like, this is from getting kicked in the teeth, from selling. This is from cold calling. My teeth aren't straight as they used to be because of all of the beatings I've taken, in sales. But, I'd say, well, I'll leave you with this too, that the other kind of thing, another funny thing that I like to say is that if process and tools and playbooks and systems were enough, there would be no such thing as top performers and leaderboards and President's Club. The secret sauce in selling is always the rep talent. And we used to know that. And right now, assembly line selling is getting away from that. And the go-to-market engineers are doing that. They're trying to build all these, flow charts of how they want things to go. And it's just not a linear process. It's like more like a Mobius strip. You don't know where people are. You get ghosted or whatever. And that's why I kind of think that it's still a pretty sound option to say, well, how do you solve a lot of these problems? Like, nail niches, like go after niche things, create campaigns where you have time frames around it for what you expect to get out of it, and then go gather that information or do what you expect, what the objective for that campaign is, and then shut it down and then do the next step of the campaign, so that you're actually kind of curating your own set of rich contact data that drives predictable outcomes through engagement, live engagement with your TAM, versus going way up above the funnel and doing all this magical provisioning, that should drive revenue when you haven't even talked to anyone, right? I think that's the old Mike Tyson thing. Like, everybody has a go-to-market plan until you pick up the phone, right? Which is the same thing. Everyone has a boxing strategy until you get punched in the face, right? Then you can't even remember because you're punch drunk. You're like, what happened? I lost. Where am I? Right? It's the same thing. That I think that going up the funnel with all of these over provisioning is again, the people who make the tools in the SDR BDR tools industrial complex, they're just sucking up that cash. Those companies are going out of business. VCs are funding a new one's coming in and dumping money into the SDR BDR industrial complex. All of the tools providers and shortcut purveyors and so on are getting rich, while companies are coming and going.
Yeah.
Big difference between what sounds good and the truth.
No, that's awesome stuff. Right. Two quick things. Anyone watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. Give Shawn some love in the comments. Shawn, where's the best place to find you? LinkedIn, I guess. Is it iNeverAnswer.com?
Just keep iNeverAnswer.com. The website's over there, but the majority of the stuff I do is on LinkedIn, and you can see my name is typed right here. You can find me that way. Super easy.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would say too that there's one last thing that I do host that free cold calling and messaging workshop every Monday morning. Yeah. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific time every morning. I cap it at about 20 people. The summertime, the attendance has been a little bit lower, but I've been tracking July, my whole entire career in July. There's always a dip. You even see on LinkedIn, people are complaining about no one's answering the phone. Well, people are on vacation. It's a cyclical thing. But yeah, on my LinkedIn profile and my highlighted posts, the link is right there. If you're an individual contributor, agency, sales leader with a team, enroll your whole team, and I'll love to see you guys there. It's a great little session.
I've been on one, so I can definitely vouch for it. It's really good stuff. So highly recommend. Thanks, Shawn. Well, absolute pleasure. See you soon. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much, Mark.